Listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes, and I'm very privileged to have Max Vanderwolf here with me, and we're going to talk about his album and get to know him a little better, maybe have a great conversation. So let's kick this off. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, let's see. New York, born and raised, kicked around town, doing the typical things kids do, getting into trouble, listening to music, going to school, getting high, seeing gigs, and then stumbling into in and out of universities and ended up in New York City making art and curating art shows, and eventually was asked to curate the gigs at the world famous Knitting Factory, the sort of home of experimental downtown art music. And it was pretty wild. Did that for a few years, and then, worked with a lot of great, interesting artists in that space. People like, Philip Glass and David Byrne and John Zorn and people like that, and a lot of lesser known and just as brilliant musicians as well. It was a really great place and a really great time in New York City's creative history. And then I was asked to go to London to program at the Royal Festival Hall, which is, a big step up in terms of capacities, room capacities, 3 different halls, a whole site, a whole gigantic canvas on which to place some of your favorite artists. And I got to work with lots of favorites, doing lots of creative projects, and also was able to work with a lot of artists that weren't that well known, or perhaps were even overlooked and forgotten, So, artists like, I had the White Stripes over pretty early. Wow. I had Joanna Newsom. I actually had the White Stripes performing with Jeff Beck. It was the only way I could get him to do the music of the Yardbirds. Oh, wow. On a 3-night Jeff Beck retrospective. So when I was talking with Jeff and his manager about doing a retrospective, the only way, I knew it was a sensitive issue to ask Jeff to perform the music of the Yardbirds.
Yeah.
I was already told by the manager that's not going to go over very well, but it's a retrospective, Jeff. We can't ignore the fact that you were in one of the most important bands of all time. And he appreciated that, but he was pretty forthright and quick to say, I can't play the music of the Yardbirds with those guys. And we forget that some of us forget, there's a lot of music that can only be played under the youthful hallucinogenic of youth. And it is, and the Yardbirds are one of those bands, they are kids. They're sharp kids, but they are kids, the Yardbirds. And, some music, you could say the same thing about early Stones and The Who, but those bands grew out gradually from their youthfulness. Mm-hmm. I question The Who playing my generation. I love it. They play it so well, but there is something about it. And, Jeff was like, I don't think I can do it. It's not going to sound like the Yardbirds. And at the time, there was this hot new band called the White Stripes. And I said, okay, what if I got some young kids at the White Stripes to be your backing band? And he immediately said, then I'll do it.
Nice.
And, thank God, Jack and Meg were all about it. Little Jack from the Greenhorns, who also plays in Jack's other bands, came in on bass. And the four of them went up there, and, you know, we closed off a hall for them to do 2 days of rehearsal. We were all excited to see them rehearse for 2 days. Literally, they got on stage, and I'd say they played through everything maybe twice, and Jack and Jeff just looked at each other and they said, let's leave it. Because it was so live, it was so exciting, and they didn't want to over rehearse it, that it became dead.
Yeah.
They knew that they would pull it off. And that was it. They went up that night. It was, you know, it was part of a bigger show, but it was definitely about a half hour of the most exciting music I'd ever heard in my life.
Wow. Those moments, man.
So my life was full of a lot of moments like this. And, you know, having something to do with it and being able to work with people like Jack and Meg and Little Jack and Jeff Beck, you know, it's like life's pretty good. Roger Waters was on those shows. John McLaughlin was on those shows. That was just one of many really cool events I put on. So, you know, I was doing my own band at the time, but I was working hard as well. And I was working on something that was, you know, pretty exciting and enjoyable. And there was always the next one. Who was I going to get to work with next? There were always proposals going out. So, you know, the music thing was, well, it was really important to me. And I never really stopped writing music, and I never stopped getting the band together to either rehearse or sometimes record. The promotion of music, that whole side of it, which includes playing live, designing posters and flyers, getting the music out to promoters and bookers and agents and managers, setting up things, finding someone to do your PR, like all that. It's like a full-time job in itself. And I'm doing a lot of that now, so I know that. But there was no way I could do 2 jobs at the time. Also, you know, the lifestyle in London when you're a promoter and things are going good, and I guess people like you and are interested in you and also want to come see the shows you put on. So you're always trading favors. Like, I had access to just about any gig I wanted to see. In fact, I got big regrets about a lot of shows in London I decided not to bother to try to get into. But, you know, I had my own shows going on, and you can go to 7 gigs every night in London. You know,
Wow.
There are great shows every night of the week. I mean, now, probably, but, you know, between, you know, I was there from 2000 to 2017 or so, 18. Yeah, you could, there were nights where you were just, and sold out. You know, London music audiences, this is what they do. Londoners go out at night. Londoners do not miss a gig. They are dedicated gig hounds. They are deeply, deeply knowledgeable about music. Even your cabbie driving you from the airport, you want to get into a conversation about music with your cabbie, he's going to have some stories. He's going to know some stuff. He's going to be able to talk about, I don't know, Eric Burdon and the Animals that he saw at some club, or that he went to the Oval Cricket Ground to see The Who in 1976. You know, or, you know, he might be, you know, a rave person and be able to talk about, you know, electronic music or something. So, you know, it's really different over there, and it was really a great place to be a promoter. And, you know, I was rightfully swept up in it, but it did come as an expense to my life as a musician.
I would love to be able to do that. Unfortunately, at about 10 o'clock, I'm done. I'm getting too old, man.
Yeah, you get pretty supercharged on the hours, I guess. I'm a big fan of coffee. What can I say?
It's funny. We went to go see Judas Priest about a month or two ago.
Yeah.
All excited, and you look around the room and I'm seeing people around my age out in the audience. And
Sure.
about 9:30, people are looking at their watch.
Yeah, well, this is a funny thing. The first time I noticed that, this is a phenomenon now. The first time I noticed that was in I think it was about 2003 or 4. The Who came out. This was when John Entwistle was still alive. The Who came out for 2 nights at Royal Albert Hall, one of the best places you could ever see a concert. And kind of the Who's, that was kind of their personal gig space in some ways. And they did 2 nights as a benefit for the Teenage Cancer Trust that Roger Daltrey oversees. Oh, and holy moly, this was like seeing the Who, because I'd seen them with Kenny Jones, and I'd seen them with Zach Starkey as well, and they were great. But this was like, they were playing at such a high level, and it was so free, and it was extreme, and the audience was great, and they were largely gentlemen about the Who's age, many of them who had grown up going to see the band. And it was thrilling. And it was a little over 3-hour show. And everyone was on their feet. And the last half hour, you were just watching guys drop off, guys who had to sit down, guys who were just like, they knew they couldn't leave. They knew they were at the greatest concert of all time, but there was no way they could leave, but they just, they weren't in Roger Daltrey physical shape. And they weren't on John Entwistle cocaine. And they weren't on Pete Townsend hubris. So, it was funny.
We actually got to go see the Who. That was about a month ago. And I really regret not being able to see him when, John was still alive.
Yeah.
But the bass player was boring. Zach was incredible.
He is. He's still great. He's still playing his ass off. But what they lost, and this is what they are now. This is what they want, or maybe it's not what Roger wants, but it's definitely what Pete wants. They kind of want to play the songs, play the hits, and then they go. And then it's over. It's not like this expansive exploration of the songs like, they used to be really free. And this version of Sparks was very different from that version of Sparks. And, like the Grateful Dead and Jimi Hendrix and some other great improvisational bands. The Who were, I always say the Who are like free jazz. And by that, I mean, there's a great interplay, and that no 2 versions of the songs between, I'll say 69 and 76, no two versions of the song sound the same. There's a lot going on that's different.
Yeah. And,
Pete Townsend is a guitarist, another great master of the instrument. His trip is that he's the only guitarist. He's got to play rhythm and lead. And no one else is doing that. And he's also got these 2 maniacs, Entwistle and Moon, there, who are not exactly holding down the store, so he can play a solo. So that's like free jazz, it's just like free jazz. The music is kind of like this. It's not, of course they'll then come in and Townsend will start crunching the chords, but it's very loose. It's very up in the air. It's very, it's flying, and it's exhilarating. And that's why they're probably the greatest live band of all time.
Yeah.
I really, I'll go face to face with people on this, but I don't think anyone's going to win an argument that the Who are the greatest live band of all time. They may not be the greatest band of all time, greatest live band of all time, the Who.
Oh, they're at least up there. I mean,
Yeah, I can't.
It's hard to find a song that's not a hit from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and just like what they do on stage to a song is, it's always fresh. They always bring something fresh to it. They got two great singers in the band as well. Big fan of Townsend's vocals as well as Rogers, but together it's super powerful. And they were unpredictable, and and also Townsend was also funny as fuck on stage. He's one of the funniest human beings in the world. You might not want to be in a room with the guy on a bad day, but boy, was he funny.
Now, I can say that I can hear a lot of influences in your music, but without sounding like those influences.
Yeah.
And it was refreshing. I mean, it's like going back to the 70s and hearing a new band come out to me.
Yeah, I've been hearing that. A couple of reviews came out this week. That there was one review that I really liked. I was kind of surprised to see it because I'm a big fan of the early Jack Bruce album, Songs for the Tailor and Harmony Row. And, they're not hugely popular records, but Songs for the Tailor in particular is like, to me, it's one of the greatest albums of all time. And there was a review today that just referred to me as a glam rock Jack Bruce. And yeah, I mean, it's like, Jack Bruce is, his influence on me as a vocalist is really profound. I've really I will be sometimes singing something and I'll be kind of like, that's probably a little bit like Jack Bruce, isn't it? And if you're singing something, particularly something bluesy, Jack's going to show you the way. Janice is going to show you the way. Jimmy's going to show you the way. There are Robert Plant's going to show you the way. You're playing something and you just start singing. You're reacting to the music and you've got all these layers and layers of listening, as recent as, things from the 2000s, but going all the way back to the, I was going to say the 1960s, but some of my listening goes back beyond that, and that stuff's going to creep in. And I know musicians who resist it and fight it or disguise it. And I'm just aware of it. I don't ever want to get into a situation where I'm impersonating anything, but my influences are diverse enough that I'm pretty comfortable that if I, maybe I don't know, maybe I sound a little like Cat Stevens here, but maybe somewhere over there I sound like, I don't know, Jack White or.
There was one point I can say it almost sounded like Mickey Thomas singing. You hit some Mickey Thomas. Man, wow. You hit some notes, and I was like, "Dang!" Because he's one of my favorite singers.
Well, I can get up there. That's one thing I am self-conscious about these days is not relying on my upper register, because I can get up there. And back in my hard rock and heavy metal days, I was really pushing it. I was really pushing into my upper register, and nothing against that, but I personally find it hard to listen back to some of that stuff I was doing. I was really pushing into the Freddie Mercury zone with some of my past vocals. And not just Freddie Mercury, Perry Farrell from James Addiction was a big vocal influence on me. And, I was just singing and trying to sing in that range. That was very, also you're playing with a loud band, you're always going to cut through when you're in that vocal register. And I was playing with a very loud band at the time.
I could have sworn that it sounded almost like Jeff Lynne at some time.
Yeah, I wouldn't really call Jeff Lynne an influence, but I think Jeff Lynne and I share a lot of influences, which are the Beatles.
Oh yeah.
But you know, I have a latent appreciation for ELO, but really at the time I was not a kid who collected those records. I think I was a little anti. You know how you get anti about stuff, you know? ELO is something I was anti. I was anti-ELO, anti-Kiss, anti, I don't know why. I think, you know, also because, you know, some kids liked it, so you didn't. But, you know, I can remember being very anti-Blue Oyster Cult, who I kind of love now. So, yeah.
You don't want to see my office. Everything's Kiss all around my office.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Look, I have friends. Kiss is their number one. It is their awakening. It is their musical awakening. Is Kiss. You know, the artist that you first go apeshit for is always and forever in your heart. It's like your first love.
Yeah.
So you know, I mean, I've got I've got friends whose first musical love is Prince. It's not my first musical love. I pick and choose. I'm very discerning about what I like by Prince. I've seen great Prince shows, and I've seen ones that bored the fuck out of me. The last one I saw was incredible. I don't collect the records. I kind of pick and choose tracks, but man, I got friends who's like, there is no greater than Prince. And, you know, I respect them. They're, you know, I'm talking about people who I respect as musicians, but it's just like, that's not me.
My earliest influence was Tom T. Hall. So,
who, sorry?
Tom T. Hall.
From 13th Floor Elevators?
No, Tom T. Hall, the one that sang Sneaky Snake.
Oh, I'm a little in the dark on that. I have to admit, I'm going to have to dig into that.
Okay, you look it up. I was a little kid, so you know.
Right. Because wasn't it? It was Tommy Hall who was the sort of mastermind of the 13th Floor Elevators, the great Texas psychedelic bands that actually, you know, psychedelic music was invented in Texas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was the Moving Sidewalks, and
yeah.
A lot of great bands came out of Texas during those days.
Yeah. Hey, have you had an opportunity to see? There's a Texas band I'm dying to see. They haven't come to LA since I've lived here, called the Golden Dawn Orchestra.
I haven't heard of them.
Okay, check them out. Check them out. They're based right there in Austin, and their show looks wild.
Wow, I'm gonna have to check that out then, especially if it's practically next door.
Yeah.
But I can hear all kinds of different styles, man. You don't stick to one exact sound through the whole album. There were times it was almost as if the Big Brother and the Holding Company were playing along, or even a little bit of Creedence or Rolling Stones.
These are all big influences. You know, it's not to my advantage that I tend to write very broadly. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of musicians who are much more clever than I, that keep their writing, at least album to album, hemmed in. And they say, okay, I'm going to write a bunch of sort of acoustic-y songs in this vein, or I'm going to introduce electronic instruments on this group of songs to keep it sounding together. You know, I'm a big fan of the White Album by the Beatles. I'm a big fan of a band like Ween, who, you know, song to song, every track is kind of different. I mean, I can't speak for all their albums, but the albums by them that I really appreciate are different track to track. Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder, it's different track to track. The Velvet Underground, the Banana Album, every track is different. And, you know, it's a journey. It all hangs together. I think it hangs together. I think what you have on this record, 12 Little Killers, is a side A, which is a little bit more blues based, and a side B, which is quite psychedelic and quite ethereal in some ways. And you know, what drives it together, I guess, is the themes, the musical themes, what's contained in the lyrics. The vocalist is the same. I don't think my vocal sound changes all that much. A little bit it does. You know, you sing blues, it's going to be a little bit different than when you sing something that's sort of pastoral or psychedelic or something. But yeah, I mean, my obsession with that kind of variety of music goes very deep. I'm a kid who like made mixtapes for all my friends in the, you know, in the 70s and 80s. My style of curating festivals and gigs is influenced by the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West, where you'd have, you know, Sly Stone, Miles Davis, and Laura Nyro on the same bill, or the Grateful Dead with James Cotton and I don't know, and Taj Mahal on the same bill. Or you'd have The Who with Elmore James and Joan Baez. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's, you know, there's, I guess I recognize the strength there is, the purity. I'll bring it to the extreme. There's a real powerful strength that the Ramones have, because every song sounds just about the same. There's a real purity to Chuck Berry. Even though there is a lot of variety in Chuck Berry, and there's always the richness of the lyrics that stand out in their own way. But, you know, I do get it. I mean, there are people who write in a specific idiom, and God bless them, it can be great. And you don't really mind that all the songs sit in a very close range. There are a lot of bands right now. I mean, I think most bands right now kind of do that, you know. I like a band called Beach House very much. Songs kind of sound all the same. Spiritualize. You speak to Jay Spaceman, he'll tell you, I only really know 3 chords. And he's built a whole career around these 3 chords. But
there's a lot of bands that did that.
A lot of bands do that, and it's what they do, and it's, you know, more power to them. I'm always like pushing out. I'm always like, well, what is this chord? What can I do with this? Well, what happens if I combine this chord with this chord? Or what happens if I start using this sound in this way? And I just, you know, sometimes that leads to another song, and I grow in that direction, or sometimes it's just that song that makes that statement, and it's the right statement to make in that case. That's probably going to work against me.
Well, see, I believe the song is Glisten, and it's almost as if David Bowie and Pink Floyd got together to do a song.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some David Bowie and Pink Floyd. I think there's a little bit of Yes and Genesis in that one, I would say.
I could hear that.
Weird, something in the vocal is vaguely Elton John about it, you know, early Elton John. Yeah, there's a lot in there. I don't think you can quite pinpoint it. It's also interesting there were no drums on that track, which kind of made it sort of an interesting approach. But it's, you know, it's really layered with a lot of lap steel guitar, which I play, and a lot of synth that's played by my keyboard player, and some strumming guitars. And it's just, yeah, kind of works. It was written on an acoustic guitar. And it was written sort of around an obsession between two chords that sounded quite strange together, but suggested a lot of melodic possibilities.
I could see maybe eating a couple of mushrooms and listen to that song.
Yeah, I haven't given the album the psilocybin test yet. Might need to take that drive.
Now there was one song. It almost sounded like I think the band was Smokey. They had a song called "Who the F is Alice."
Wow.
Have you ever heard that one?
No.
You got to look up that song.
Okay, I'm gonna look up that song. Where the hell is Alice?
Yeah, it's not that word, but
right.
But everyone was refreshingly different. Every one of the songs, I could listen to that album all the way through. In fact, I did do that.
All right, I found Smokey, the ultimate Smokey hits.
I think that's the name of the band.
Sounds like it's a live recording.
Yeah.
It's the live version of the song. All right, I'll be listening to that. Thank you very much. All right, I got a Smokey reference. It's always good when you get references. I really like getting references to bands that I don't really know well. My last release with the band Last Man Standing, that was my London band, we got a reference, I think in Uncut it was, we got a reference to the Sensational Alex Harvey Band, which I knew of the Sensation. I'd seen the name, the Sensational Alex Harvey Band. I knew they played a lot of festivals in London in the early 70s, but never really took the time to listen to them. So of course I, went out and got CDs and stuff and started listening to them. And yeah, I was kind of like, wow, they're kind of flying on some of the same, hubris we were. And you could tell from listening to the records, they must have been a spectacular live band. And I got, we were compared to the Decemberists. Can't remember which band was compared to the Decemberists, but at the time I knew who they were, but I hadn't checked them out. And it was actually, someone said we were a cross between, which makes no sense if like this description's bizarre, but a cross between the Decemberists and Guns N' Roses.
Oh my Lord.
And you just go like, what? How could that even be? And then of course, once I heard the Decemberists, I just kind of like, yeah, I kind of get it. Okay, I see what they're going for here.
I'd have to hear them. To me, I mean, I could hear the influences, but it didn't sound like anybody that I'd heard before.
Yeah, good. I mean, I'm hoping that people listen. I'm hoping two things, I'm hoping people listen to it in its totality, because it is a journey. It is a sequential. I spend a lot of time. I'm a big fan of the album, and all this shuffle mode bullshit that we get in the age of Spotify is not really good for artists making a prolonged statement. And so I'm hoping people take the time and at least do side A, do side B, even if you don't do them together, because each one of them is a composite. And I think, I hope the songs work individually, but I hope people try to take them on as a composite. And then, I hope people listen beyond the influences.
Well, I don't get into a lot of new music. There's a few bands I'll listen to, and there's even some outside of what I normally listen to that I actually like. There's a band out of Miami. They're called the Elastic Bond, and you can hear the Latin influence. And I mean, there's a little bit of a hip hop sound to it, which I'm not a big fan of, but I did enjoy their music. There's some Caribbean, other kind of stuff, really, really like. And to hear something like what you put out, I was like, wow, finally somebody I haven't heard before that I can get into.
Good.
I will say I was a little nervous because the first song was I'm Not a Mountain, and it's a good song. It was
Yeah.
kind of starting out slow, and I'm like, okay, I hope the whole album's not like this. And then I heard all these other tunes, and some of it was real, you could tap your feet to, and some of it was like, oh yeah, I could kick back and look at the stars and listen to this. And I'm going, I can listen to this on my trips back to home to go see the family. So I imagine that's what you were going for.
Yeah, exactly. This is an album that you could put on in your car when you're taking that, that 45-minute to hour-long drive where you just want to, it's like, I was going to say, it's like a podcast, but in a way it is, that's how we listen. That's what long-form listening has become in our age. People tend to not listen to anything long form when they're listening to music these days. They tend to listen to a piece here and a piece there. I'm guilty of it myself, man. I do keep up with a lot of contemporary music. I do like to find out I'm always looking for what the best shit is out there. And I can tell you some good stuff that I think you'd like, actually. And but like, for when people do actually listen right now, they tend to be listening to podcasts. So, kind of thinking maybe I should just re-release this album and call it a podcast. See how many podcast listeners we get.
Might be surprised.
I think we might be surprised, actually. I think it's a pretty hot idea.
Well, is there any specific meaning behind that first tune, I'm Not a Mountain?
Well, yeah, there are a couple of things about this song. I mean, first of all, one of the reasons the gestation on this album was so prolonged was because I really struggled to find a logical sequence for about 45 songs that we had. I'd say we recorded 30 songs, and then there were another 10 songs that were in a state of early stages, and I really could not come up with the album. I couldn't come up with that 10 or 12 or 15 songs. It's one of the things you have when you write very broadly. You then have to compile it into a statement that makes sense in a sequence that has an arc. And I got stuck. And time after time, I just kind of, one or two things. I either said, well, let's just go into the studio and record more songs. And, or sometimes I just like, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to think about it. It's just not adding up to me. And I finally, the great musicians that were around me who really donated their time and talent, and sometimes for years, they all got, I knew they were getting really frustrated with my lack of conclusion on this project. And I finally, turned to my keyboard player, my dear friend Sam, who you'll hear all over that record. And he's the only keyboard player on that record. And said, you do it. You show me how this makes sense. And he said, I'll do it, but you don't get to tell me, once I do it, it's done. Mm-hmm. And I negotiated for one veto. I said, okay, but I get one song that I can say no to and swap in another song. And he reluctantly agreed to that. And he presented the album to me, the sequence to me, and I was really surprised. I instantly recognized that he had sorted it out. And one thing that really surprised me but delighted me was he chose I Am Not a Mountain as the first song. I'd never thought of it as an opening track before. Mm-hmm. But what I really like what the song does is it's kind of surprising, especially in my background and the music I make, to open a record with such a whisper of a song. And it's a kind of confessional. It reminds me a little bit of Pigs on the Wing, Part 1 from the Pink Floyd Animals record. It's just kind of, it's very personal. It opens the record on the most personal note I think there is on the whole record. There are a couple of, I mean, there's a lot of personal notes, but that's a really intimate moment. And he opened the album with a very intimate statement, and I recognized that, and that was great. And then we head into some rockers after that.
Oh yeah.
And my one veto, by the way, was he put in a song that I just really didn't get with. It's a great song, but I haven't figured out if it's my song yet, if you know what I mean. Feels like it's a song I could give to another singer. It may end up on a record someday. I'm getting perhaps more comfortable with it, but I put in Glisten instead. So Glisten was my, we have to have Glisten on the record. So I moved that one out, put Glisten in.
Yeah, Glisten's one of my favorites on there. And the Existential Terrier.
Yeah. Have you
cool.
seen the videos yet?
Yes, I have. I was going to ask you who made those videos.
So there's a guy named Alden Volney in France, and I can't remember how I first came across his videos, but I knew I wanted video animation. And I also really wanted to hook up with somebody that was gonna like really carry the visual vision forward for my music, because as you say, it's pretty broad. It's pretty wide. I'm really going for a lot of different areas in music. I wanted a visual identity that kind of tied it in nicely. And so, we've done 4 videos now. We did the one that features Robert Wyatt on the EP called, I can't believe I drew a blank on it. And then once you draw a blank, then you like freak out and you draw a blank again.
I do it all the time, man.
When the Fire Grows Cold is this track that features Robert Wyatt. That's that's just such a stunning, beautiful video. And then, but the first one he did for me was Glisten. And then he did one that I'm going to release in, I think, October, November, which is a really different kind of track. It's kind of futuristic. And he did a super cool video for it. And it's a very different kind of song. It's a song we played as a rock band, but then I felt that it needed a kind of refreshing, which we did a sort of retro futurism on that one. So we'll have that one out in November. And then the last one he did is Existential Terrier, which basically I just went to him and I said, look, I know it's maybe a little corny or a little funny, or this is different from all your kind of psychedelic stuff, but let's just have a cartoon dog. Because in the history of cartoon dogs,
with his own cereal.
Yeah, exactly. So I just really said, you come up with a psychedelic video about a cartoon dog and we are on our way. I said, you can do anything you want with it, but just give me a psychedelic video about a cartoon dog, because, we're in the world of, Snoopy and Deputy Dog and Mother's Little Helper and just every great cartoon dog you can think of. Sherman.
Oh, yeah.
Big fan of Mr. Peabody, Sherman and Mr. Peabody. And I would just I will be happy. If nothing else happens with this album, I will just be happy if the Existential Terrier makes it into the Hall of Fame of cartoon dogs.
It's a cool little video, I'll say that. Man, I wish I could go over all of these songs. I mean, got to NYC and it almost gave me a feel of Loving Spoonful or John Sebastian kind of stuff. And
wow.
I mean, there's just so much on this album.
that turns me on that you say that about Love and Spoonful. I mean, obviously, I grew up with that. That was that was still on the airwaves when I was, a little kid growing up, and that might factor into it. I really don't exactly know where that came from. That guitar riff, that kind of jerky, funny guitar riff, that came out of me just playing. I just, like a lot of songs, I ended up just kind of playing it by accident, being like, what the hell is this? And it reminded me a little bit of Captain Beefheart.
Oh yeah. It's funny, I had Jeff Cotton on the show, by the way.
Oh, did you? Wow.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, it's just a little bit off kilter, that guitar riff. It's kind of blues, but it's really not. It's kind of like it's kind of like driving a jalopy with a flat tire. It's like, it's like, and so that immediately fascinated me. And then the chorus is, I'm not sure, but it is a big gang sing-along chorus, isn't it? I mean, I'm thinking a little bit, I never would cite myself as a big Bruce Springsteen or Southside Johnny fan, but it feels a little Southside Johnny, Bruce Springsteen, that chorus to me. It's a big sing-along. It's a little Elvis Costello as well. I would say Elvis is an influence. And in terms of lyrics, we were talking about Houston and Austin and how they've changed. Well, New York is not New York anymore. And it's a little sad, but that's the way it goes. That's, cities change. I moved to LA, but I meet people who have lived here for years and they're like, well, it's not like the LA we moved to. I think LA's taken a longer time to change. Hollywood still dominates and has. It's not like a new tech industry has moved in, although tech has moved into parts of LA as well. But to me, LA is new. I've never lived here before, so I'm not, even though I've visited many times and I always had bands that toured through here, still feels like LA to me. But New York, that song is about what happens when your town changes, when things like, you remember when you used to be able to live in a really nice 2-bedroom for under $500 a month. Well, that ain't
good luck with that now.
Yeah, this is true I got lots of friends who moved out of Austin.
Yeah. You can't, unless you've got the money, you can't live directly in Austin. And I like living outside of it. You got friendlier people here, and I'm 10 minutes from getting my feet in the water. That's where I unwind,
that's
man.
Great. Yeah, are you somewhere near like Barton Springs, or what's your closest?
Oh, we're not far from there.
Okay.
We you know where Canyon Lake is?
Heard of it, but I don't quite know where it is. But we're over there. Okay.
Yeah, probably about, 30, 40 minutes from Canyon Lake, but we got a river that I can't remember the name of the park, but you go in and you can just get down in the water, put your feet in, and get so relaxed because you're surrounded by nature, and it's so peaceful, and the water's so clean, and it helps to ground you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I want to give a kind of a review of this album, and the way I look at it is as if, like when you go fishing and you finally hook that fish and you kind of let it play around. Well, that's the way the listener is. You kind of playing around, then all of a sudden you just reel it right on in. It's the only way to explain it, because it's got that real easy going, and then all of a sudden, man, you can't help but tap your feet and get into it, and
yeah.
it's I'm not just saying it, it's a really good album.
Yeah.
Man, it's a really good album.
I appreciate that. Some of that is intentional. I mean, in terms of I'm a melodicist. I want to hook the viewer. I do want the songs to be memorable. I do like it when people can, when people know the choruses and, and know that hook or know that riff. There was something originally that made me play that. It was a hook for me when I first wrote it. When I first wrote it, it made me so crazy. I couldn't stop. I got obsessed with it. I got so obsessed I had to get my friends to play it. I had to teach it to them. I had to ask them, why does this work? I had to learn about it. I had to write a whole fucking song about it, around it. I had to build upon it. I had to layer it. I had to go into the studio with it. I had to spend a whole bunch of money on it. So, that hook that you're hearing that got you, that's the hook that got me too. It really drove me to a point of obsession where I had to pursue it, chase it, realize it.
Well,
I'm really happy when you say it's like fishing, because I was hooked too.
When you do your vocals, that you get to a certain point, and when I first heard some of the songs, I was like, okay, is he going to actually make the notes? Is he going to hit it? And you went right naturally into it. There's nothing electronic about any of that. It's all free flowing. It's natural. I love that kind of voice where you not a whole, I don't know, there's unless you're one of the big time singers, it's hard to get that kind of sound. I hope you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I do. I got a lot of voice in me. I always say singing is easy. It's everything else in life that's hard. That's kind of my motto.
Well, you do it very well, I will say, and
Thank you.
very much appreciated. I've told the story a million times that I met Billy James because I saw him on a Frank Zappa documentary, and funny that you and I have Frank Zappa in common.
Yeah.
And so I get a hold of Billy and I invite him to come on the show, and he says, I'll do you one better. And he starts sending me music and says, check these artists out and see if we can get them on your show. And I was like, oh yeah, I gotta have that guy.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on. He hasn't done me wrong yet. Everything he sent me has been some really good stuff.
Okay.
You plan on keeping this going, or you have no other projects in mind?
Yeah, well, one great thing about the amount of time it took me to get this record out is I've still got stuff from the London sessions to release. Mm-hmm. I've got an album I've just recorded in LA that I've got maybe one more vocal session to do for that. And then I'm going to be mixing that in New York. And that's going to be the next album to come out. And that is just, I'm really excited about these 9 songs. They are really strong. They are, they're pretty varied as well. Maybe not as varied as what you're hearing on 12 Little Killers, but it's got some Pink Floyd moments and some David Bowie moments. It's me doing my thing, and that kind of all my influences are coming in. It's got an amazing band through the whole thing.
Sweet.
Incredible guitarist, and I'm reunited with my old drummer from my New York City band in the 90s, which gives it a really good camaraderie and a really good emotional and thematic quality. And it's a little bit about coming back to the States, which also is sort of a resonant theme and what that means, all the complexities of that. And then I've got an And then after that, I'll probably re-release either a record that came out in '96. It never had a proper release. And it's called an all-star musical tribute to Max Vanderwolf. And it's called that because it is a bit of a schizophrenic journey through a lot of different music. Like if you think this album is diverse, that album's really all over the map. And then there's the Last Man Standing album, which got great reviews, came out in 2008. We played lots of festivals, and it should have had a broader release, and the record company went bust. We were on Judy Collins' record label at the time. Judy Collins, the American folk singer, on a label called Wildflower, and they put a lot of investment. And this is not the first time. It seems to happen. I've had this happen 3 times in my career. This is another thing about why the record's taken such a long time. It's like when you've been the victim of the record industry 3 or 4 times, you know, whether it's through, you know, the record industry's malicious intent or a general fumbling of financial duties, you do kind of say, all right, you know, this is not real. And so, you know, it really took a while for me to pick myself up and dust myself off to be able to say, okay, I'm going to start putting out music again. Because it's tough. You know how tough it is. And, but I'm feeling pretty good about it now. My expectations are a little bit different. And, you know, the important thing is to keep making the music and keep being creative. And that's what I keep doing.
I'm going to definitely share out this album to all my connections and my audience. And I really want them to be exposed to it. But,
good.
Man,
I really hope we can do something in Texas. I really hope we can play. The band I'm playing with, the guys I'm playing with in LA, this would be a great band, and it wouldn't be impossible for us to come to Austin and play. We all have connections there, so I'll keep you posted in case we do.
Man, it'd be awesome. I get backstage, right?
Absolutely.
Sweet. I love it. Well, man, I could talk about this all day. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of the show, and
cool.
It's been an honor to have you on the show. I appreciate your time, man.
Well, I really appreciate the depth at which you've approached this interview, and the depth at which you've done some listening. And I just, you know, I really hope this is one of these albums you keep coming back to, because that to me is, when I hear, that's always, it's great when people love your album, but like when you meet people who you've known for a long time and they keep coming back to the album, say, oh man, you know, I listened to it, or you get an email from someone you haven't heard for a while and say, you know, I'm still listening to this album, and you're just like, thank God, man, I'm actually in the collection. I'm actually in your album collection, somewhere between, you know, somewhere between the Allman Brothers and Frank Zappa. I'm in there, and you're still listening to me. You know, that's really good. That's one of the best things about this.
Well, when your new stuff comes out, please let me know, because I'd love to have you back on to talk about it, and I definitely want to promote it.
Cool. All right, thanks. I gotta go listen to Smokey now.
I hear you. Well, thank you for your time. I want to thank everyone out there. If you are new to the channel, I appreciate you stopping by, and I hope you'll come back, hit that subscribe button. If you're a regular to the channel, I thank you for your support. It's because of you that we do what we do. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network